is going on, everybody? Car Guy V8 here, and today I'm going to bring you a street review of my AFR Enforcer cylinder heads that are on my small block Chevy. So first off, let me tell you a little bit about the combination that we're dealing with. About 2.5 years ago, I sent off my 880 roller block to the local machine shop, and they rebuilt the bottom end and put in a fresh set of flat top pistons. When I received that fresh bottom end back, I put on my set of AFR Enforcer cylinder heads, I put in an XR 282 camshaft, and I put on an Edelbrock EPS intake manifold and 1.5 roller rockers. So with that setup, it's about 9.63 to 1, 355 cubic inch small block, and it makes roughly 400 horsepower at the crankshaft, and I based that number off of a couple of Engine Masters builds they did. They made a 10 to 1 383, which of course that has 28 more cubic inches, but it's an identical setup except for they used an air gap intake instead of just a regular Performer EPS, and they made 471 horsepower. And Engine Masters also built a 327 small block, and they used the same cylinder heads and they used the air gap intake, but they used a thumper cam, a 227 241 camshaft, and with that setup I think it was a 9.7 to 1 compression ratio, 327, and they made 441 horsepower. So I think it's safe to assume that through a street exhaust system and a 3-pulley V-belt system, that 400 horsepower is probably right on the money for my combination. Here are my impressions of these AFR cylinder heads after I've put roughly 3,000 street miles on this engine over the last couple of years. First, I ran it in my old square body, which had a 308 rear end, and now it's in my 78 Camaro, which has a 456 rear end. And in both setups, I ran a turbo 400 transmission and a 2800 10-inch stall converter. This is a very cruisable, very drivable setup. I have personally cruised for 30, 40, even 50 miles on one occasion, just because it is such a joy to drive. You don't even have to be heavy throttling around or anything, just light throttling around, hearing that cam thump. It's such a joy to drive because whenever you do need that power, you can just hit that gas pedal and it'll just jump through the RPMs, and you can really feel the power come on with those heads. But whenever you're light throttling around, it feels pretty much just like any mild small block Chevy, so it's not like you lose anything down low. But like I said, when you hit that throttle and jump up through that RPM range, you hit peak power around 6,000. But the thing is, it still carries past that. Even Engine Masters confirmed that with their dynos, with their 327. It carried all the way to 6,800. It only lost 6 horsepower from 6,100 to 6,800 RPMs. And I personally experienced that with these heads. You hit 6,000, but it keeps on pulling and just does not drop off like you would expect. I try to shift it around 62, 63 if I can, but I have carried it further before, and it just never feels like there's a major drop off, which I know you carry it far enough, there absolutely will be. Heck, if you rev it any higher than that, you'll probably be walking home without a hot rod. But now time for the performance test. So I don't have a speedometer and I don't have a draggy because I'm not rich, I can't afford a draggy yet. I hope to get one day, but for now I'm basing this on the blocklayer.com gear ratio calculator, which that's my favorite gear ratio calculator. I use it many times, based on the parameters of a 456 rear gear, a 28-inch tall tire, and a 7% stall converter slip percentage, which would put me at 5,200 RPMs in second gear, would be 60 miles per hour. So whenever I actually went out and tested these 0 to 60s, I based it on 5,400 RPM just to be a little conservative. I'd rather it be a little slower than be a little faster. I don't want to lie to you guys on how fast it is or anything, so I'm trying to be conservative with this test. But I took it out and I did 2 0 to 60 tests. I put a timer on the screen that I started the second I saw the first bit of movement, and I stopped it the second I saw 5,400 RPM on the tachometer, because the tachometer is spot on this car. I do know that. So these should be pretty accurate based on the block layer gear ratio calculator, and I believe it was about 70 degrees the day I recorded that, and we're sitting at about 400 feet above sea level. So enjoy these 0 to 60 tests that I did. So guys, as you can see, these AFR heads are actually quite good on the street, and that's in a roughly 3,400 pound Camaro with a 3-speed automatic, heavy turbo 400. And it's more than adequate on the street. It's actually quite impressive for what it is. I mean, you saw quite a bit of tire spin. I mean, I'm not running drag slicks or anything like that. Those are just 28-inch tall street tires. She leaves skid marks, taking off. But these heads, good cylinder heads, guys. If I were you, I'd pick some up. They're very budget oriented. They flow a little bit better than Vortec heads. Oh, and my machine shop, they actually tested one of the valve springs and said it was perfect for the application, the 282 camshaft. No issues there, no valve float or anything, even up past 6,000 RPM. So guys, get these cylinder heads. They're great. I hope you enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Oh, and I'm not affiliated by them. This is my own personal opinion on these cylinder heads. And I love them. I've even overheated them twice on accident. 2 unfortunate incidents that they've overheated pretty bad. Still kicking, still getting down the street, doing all these performance tests just fine. Thank y'all for watching.